In the heart of a city that thrived on rumors, money, and power, Jasmine Blue was no stranger to getting what she wanted. She had a reputation for being sly, manipulative, and always a step ahead of everyone around her. What most people didn't know, however, was that Jasmine had a few deep, dark secrets she wasn't afraid to use to her advantage. And right now, those secrets were worth $50,000, money she was about to collect from two unsuspecting men. Kris Frost and Jung Jock were two men she had been playing for weeks, toying with them like pawns on a chessboard. Both had their own lives, their own ambitions, but neither of them knew that they were about to get caught in her web. Kris Frost, a successful businessman with a sharp eye for opportunities, had always been a bit too confident in his ability to control every situation. He had a history of making deals, taking risks, and using people to get ahead. But Kris had no idea that his charm and smooth talking ways would soon be his downfall. Jung Jock, on the other hand, was a rising star in the entertainment world. His popularity was skyrocketing, and he had the world at his feet. But there was one thing that Jock had been hiding, one secret that he thought no one would ever discover. Jasmine knew all about it. She had been watching him, learning about his weaknesses, and now she was ready to exploit them. It all started when Jasmine received a tip-off from a source who had been close to both men. The information was too juicy to ignore. Kris and Jung had both been involved in some shady dealings that could ruin their reputations if they ever came to light. Jasmine knew she had the leverage she needed to blackmail them, and she wasn't going to let this opportunity slip through her fingers. Her plan was simple: $50,000, or the secrets would be exposed. Jasmine reached out to Kris first. They had met a few times in the past, and she knew how to get under his skin. He had always been attracted to her, even if he didn't want to admit it. And Jasmine knew how to use that to her advantage. "Hey, Kris," she said over the phone, her voice smooth and enticing. "We need to talk. It's about your little secret." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Kris, usually so composed, sounded nervous. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," she replied, leaning back in her chair and smirking. "You've been a busy boy, haven't you? But I've got something that could ruin all your hard work." Kris was silent for a moment, and Jasmine could almost hear the wheels turning in his head. "What do you want?" "Let's just say I want a little compensation for keeping my mouth shut. $50,000, Kris, and we'll call it even. Otherwise, well, your reputation is about to take a nosedive." The tension on the other end of the line was palpable. Jasmine had him exactly where she wanted him. Kris was no fool, and he knew he couldn't afford to have his secrets exposed. He agreed to her terms reluctantly. Next, it was Jung Jock's turn. Jasmine had already gathered all the information she needed to corner him. She reached out to him through social media, sending a cryptic message that made him uneasy. "Jock, we need to talk. I've got some stuff I think you'll want to hear. Call me." Jock, like Kris, didn't know what to expect, but Jasmine had already planted the seeds of doubt in his mind. When he called her, she wasted no time. "Jock, I know all about your little side business," she said, her voice cool and controlled. "And let me tell you, it's not looking good." There was a sharp intake of breath from Jock, followed by a forced laugh. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've been running a scam behind the scenes, haven't you? Making money off people who trust you. I could expose you to the world, Jock. And trust me, it won't be pretty." Jock was quiet, processing the information. He had always been good at covering his tracks, but Jasmine had dug deep. She had found the one thing that could bring him down, and now he was in her grip. "What do you want?" he finally asked, his voice tinged with frustration. "Same as Kris," Jasmine said. "I want $50,000, no questions asked. If you don't pay, your world is going to crumble." Both men were now in the palm of her hand, their fates sealed by their own secrets. Jasmine had orchestrated this perfectly. They would pay her, and she would walk away with the money, all while keeping their dark past buried. But Jasmine's plan wasn't without its risks. As the money began to change hands, Jasmine couldn't shake the feeling that someone might be onto her. She was playing a dangerous game, but she was determined to win. The stakes were high, and she was ready for whatever came next. Jasmine Blue leaned back in her chair, staring at the stack of money on her desk. The $50,000 was exactly what she had expected. Cold, hard cash. But as she counted the bills, something gnawed at her. The deal with Kris Frost and Jock was supposed to be straightforward, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to lose control. Something didn't sit right. Her phone buzzed, breaking her thoughts. It was a message from Kris. "We need to meet, Jasmine. I've got a proposition." Jasmine didn't respond immediately. She knew Kris was rattled. After their conversation, she had sensed that he was scrambling, trying to find a way out of this blackmail trap. He was smart, after all, but not smart enough to outmaneuver her. Not yet. She made a mental note to meet him later, but first she needed to deal with Jock. He hadn't responded to her demands yet, and she wasn't about to let him off the hook. She picked up her phone and sent him a message. "Time's ticking, Jock. Don't make me wait too long." Her fingers hovered over the screen as she waited for his reply, knowing that he would cave soon enough. He always did. But what bothered her was that Jock had seemed different during their last conversation. There was an uneasiness in his voice, a hint that maybe, just maybe, he was more dangerous than she had anticipated. As the hours passed, Jasmine's phone finally rang again. This time it was Jock. "Jasmine, I need to meet you," he said, his voice sounding more serious than before. "Let's talk in person. I'll pay you. But I want to know what it's going to take to make this go away." Jasmine's lips curled into a smile. It was always the same. The men who thought they could outsmart her, only to fall right into her trap. But there was something about Jock's tone that made her hesitate. What did he mean by what it's going to take? Was he planning something? "All right, Jock," she replied, keeping her voice calm. "Meet me at the usual spot in an hour, and bring the money." The conversation ended, and Jasmine prepared herself for the meeting. She wasn't worried. She had both men exactly where she wanted them. But even as she stood up to leave, a small part of her knew that the stakes were higher than she had initially realized. Kris Frost and Jock weren't just ordinary men. They had connections, power, and resources. This wasn't going to be as simple as collecting the money and walking away. The meeting with Jock was set in a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. Jasmine arrived first, sitting at a corner booth with a clear view of the door. She was dressed to kill, wearing a sleek black dress and a look that said she was in control. The moment Jock walked in, she knew he was on edge. He was dressed casually, but the tension in his posture was evident. He scanned the room briefly before his eyes landed on her. As he walked over, she couldn't help but notice how different he looked, a little more guarded, a little more cautious. "Jasmine," he greeted her coolly, sitting across from her. "Jock," she replied, her eyes locking onto his with a steady, unwavering gaze. Without a word, he slid a briefcase across the table. Jasmine didn't even bother to open it right away. She had already seen the money. It was there, $50,000, just like she demanded. "Pleasure doing business with you," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. But Jock wasn't smiling. "This isn't over, Jasmine," he said, leaning in slightly. "I'm paying you, but that doesn't mean I'll forget this. I've got people who can find you if this ever comes back to haunt me." Jasmine raised an eyebrow, unfazed by his threat. "Is that supposed to scare me, Jock? You're in this as deep as I am. You're just another man trying to cover his tracks, and you're too late. I've got you, both of you, right where I want you." Jock's jaw clenched, but he didn't say anything more. He knew she was right. This wasn't just about money. This was about power, and Jasmine was holding all the cards. As they finished their conversation, Jasmine could sense the shift in the air. It wasn't just about the money anymore. Both Kris and Jock were now more than just pawns in her game. They were threats. They had the potential to turn this whole situation around, and she couldn't afford to let that happen. Jasmine left the cafe, feeling confident that everything was in its place. But deep down, she knew things were about to get complicated. Kris Frost was still out there, and she had yet to meet with him. When she finally met Kris, it wasn't at a cafe or a safe location. Kris had chosen a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a place far removed from prying eyes. Jasmine didn't trust him, but she had no choice but to go. The moment she stepped inside, Kris was already waiting. His expression was tense, his eyes scanning the area as if he expected someone to jump out at any moment. "Jasmine," he greeted her, but there was an edge to his voice. "We need to talk." "About what?" she asked, crossing her arms. "You already paid. What more is there to discuss?" Kris didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. He handed it to her without a word. Jasmine opened it and found a letter inside. Her eyes quickly scanned the contents. It was a warning, a threat, really. Kris had made it clear that if she tried to come after him again, he would expose everything. The dark secrets they had both worked so hard to keep hidden would be thrown into the light. "You're making a mistake, Kris," she said coldly, her voice unwavering. "You think you can scare me with this. I'm not afraid of you." But deep down, Jasmine knew this wasn't over. Kris was no fool, and his warning wasn't something she could ignore. She had to play this carefully. Both men were growing more desperate, and desperation led to dangerous decisions. With $100,000 in her pocket, Jasmine left the warehouse, but she couldn't shake the feeling that things were starting to spiral out of control. The money was nice, but the game was far from over. Jasmine Blue sat in her luxury apartment, counting the cash for the third time that week. $100,000 in 2 weeks. On paper, it looked like she'd won, but her gut told a different story. Both Kris Frost and Jung Jock had paid up, but neither of them had walked away quietly. She could feel the pressure closing in. She wasn't dealing with soft targets anymore. These were powerful men, and they weren't going to let her blackmail go unanswered. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. She let it ring. She wasn't in the mood, but then a message popped up. "We know what you're doing. Stop before it's too late." No name, no details, just that one chilling sentence. Jasmine frowned. It wasn't from Kris or Jock. The tone was different. Cold, calculated. It felt like someone new had entered the game. She quickly began to scan her apartment, looking for any signs she was being watched. Hidden cameras, recording devices, nothing. But paranoia was creeping in, and it wasn't without reason. She had crossed too many lines, made too many enemies, and now it seemed someone was playing her game, but from the shadows. Later that night, she arranged a meeting with her closest friend, Sasha, someone she trusted from back in the day. Sasha had always been good at digging up dirt and cleaning up messes. "I think they're plotting something," Jasmine whispered over drinks at a rooftop bar. "I don't know who sent the message, but it's not Kris or Jock." Sasha leaned in. "You're in deep, Jas. You took money from two men with egos the size of skyscrapers. You don't think they talk to each other?" Jasmine shook her head. "I was careful. I split the deals. Different timing, different angles. They don't know they're both being played." Sasha raised an eyebrow. What if they do now? The question hit hard. It had never occurred to Jasmine that Kris and Jock might compare notes. But if they did, if they figured out they were both being extorted by the same woman, the consequences would be explosive. Jasmine's heart raced. "I need to disappear for a bit," she said. "Lay low." But it was already too late. The very next morning, footage leaked online. A video, grainy but clear enough, of Jasmine meeting Jock in that secluded cafe. Then another, her at the warehouse with Kris. No sound, just video, but the implication was damning. Within minutes, blogs were posting. Headlines screamed, "Jasmine Blue, love and hip-hop's queen of scandal. $100,000 blackmail scheme exposed." Jasmine's phone blew up with calls, texts, threats. Her name was everywhere. She knew it had to be them. Kris and Jock. They were coming for her, and they weren't being subtle anymore. She called Jock first, no answer. Then Kris, straight to voicemail. Panic started setting in, but Jasmine wasn't the type to crumble. If they were going to take her down, she wasn't going alone. She got to work, pulling together every receipt, every message, every voice note they had ever sent her. She still had leverage. Maybe not enough to clear her name in public, but enough to do some damage. She planned to drop everything anonymously, expose both of them. Let the world see who they really were. But before she could upload anything, a knock came at her door. 3 sharp taps. Too deliberate. She froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. She peered through the peephole. Nothing, just an envelope taped to the door. She opened the door slowly, heart pounding, and grabbed it. Inside, a flash drive, no note, no explanation. She rushed to her laptop and plugged it in. What she saw made her run cold. Surveillance footage of her in her apartment, on her phone, taking money, making demands, conversations recorded, calls documented, everything. Someone had been watching her this whole time, and now they had enough to ruin her completely. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time she answered. Hello. A deep voice responded. Calm, confident, unfamiliar. You played your game well, Jasmine, but it's over now. Who is this? She asked, her voice shaking. Let's just say I work with people who don't like blackmailers. You should be careful about who you threaten. What do you want? Nothing. We've already got what we need. Click. The line went dead. The next day, Kris Frost went live on social media. Calm, composed. I want to clear the air, he said. There's been a lot of gossip, a lot of noise. But here's the truth. I was targeted by someone trying to ruin my name, and I wasn't the only one. He never said her name, but everyone knew. Then Jock posted a cryptic tweet. Play with fire, get burned. The streets were buzzing. Fans were divided. Some defended Jasmine, called her a queen, said she was playing the same game men had played for years. Others weren't so forgiving. Back in her apartment, Jasmine stared at her reflection in the mirror. The money was still there. The receipts were still safe. But her image, her reputation, shattered. And whoever had sent that flash drive, they were still out there, watching, waiting. She wasn't sure how it would all end, but she knew one thing for certain. She'd started a war. And in this game of power, secrets, and survival, nobody walks away clean.